He was despised for his appearance, ignored for his simplicity, but when they discovered who he really was, everything changed. Now he has a choice: take revenge or transform the town forever. Some lessons aren't taught with words, but with actions. The sun was setting over Green Valley when Michael Roberts parked his old Ford F-100 in front of the Golden Chateau, the most prestigious restaurant in the region. The establishment, with its stone walls and arched windows, stood out from the simplicity of the small countryside town, like an exotic jewel amid the green fields that stretched as far as the eye could see. Michael adjusted his worn hat, a gift from his father, and observed his reflection in the tinted glass entrance. His boots were covered in red dirt, the result of a full day supervising planting on his land. He hadn't bothered to change clothes. The plaid shirt and faded jeans had been his faithful companions for years. As he pushed the heavy carved oak door, he was greeted by a sophisticated atmosphere illuminated by crystal chandeliers. The aroma of fine spices and expensive wines hung in the air, mixing with the whispers and giggles of well-dressed clients occupying the tables. "May I help you?" The affected voice of the maitre d', Henri Dupont, cut through the air like a razor. His eyes scanned Michael from head to toe, lingering on the dirt stains on his boots. "Good evening. Table for one, please," replied Michael, maintaining the dignity he had inherited from generations of rural workers. "I'm sorry, sir, but all our tables are reserved tonight," lied Henry, deliberately ignoring the several empty tables around. A lady wearing a pearl necklace whispered something to her companion, and both laughed discreetly behind their linen napkins. Michael felt the weight of their disdainful looks, but maintained his composure. 20 years managing farms had taught him that true strength comes from calmness. "I understand," he simply replied, turning on his heels and leaving the restaurant, with the same tranquility with which he had entered. The next morning, Green Valley was buzzing with news. The mysterious businessman who had bought dozens of properties in the region and planned multi-million-dollar investments had finally decided to make a personal visit. Rumors were running wild. Was he a foreign tycoon? An investor from the capital? Speculations grew by the hour. Sarah Parker, the young journalist from the local newspaper, tried to discover more about this enigmatic character. Her investigations led her to a series of agribusiness companies, all interconnected and masterfully managed by someone who preferred to remain in the shadows. "They say he chose the Golden Chateau as a meeting point for future meetings," commented her source, a local real estate broker. "The owner, John Paul, is in a frenzy preparing everything. It seems the businessman has ambitious plans for the region." John Paul gathered his entire team that afternoon. "My friends, we need to be prepared. This client could change the fate of our establishment. I want impeccable courtesy with all customers today, all of them, understood?" The sun was beginning to set again when the familiar Ford F-100 parked in front of the restaurant. The same man, with the same worn hat and dusty boots, got out of the vehicle. This time, however, the reaction was completely different. Henry, the maitre d', practically ran to open the door. "Good evening, sir. Welcome to the Golden Chateau. We have the best table in the house specially reserved for you." Michael observed the change in behavior with interest. The same people who could barely hide their disdain the day before were now bending over backwards with smiles and bows. The lady with the pearl necklace waved discreetly, as if they were old acquaintances. As he was led to the most privileged table in the salon, Michael noticed Sarah seated in a corner, observing everything with attentive eyes. She was different. Her eyes showed genuine curiosity, not the greed he saw in others. Perhaps it was time for someone to know the true story behind the mysterious businessman of Green Valley. The meal proceeded amid constant attempts at approach from other clients. Local businessmen coincidentally passed by his table, introducing themselves and leaving cards. Michael received them with the same politeness he had shown the night before when he was rejected. John Paul personally supervised the service, ensuring everything was perfect. The most expensive wine from the cellar was decanted with reverence, and dishes that weren't available on the menu magically appeared. At the end of the meal, Michael requested the presence of the owner and the maitre d' at his table. Silence took over the salon. All eyes turned to that scene, waiting for the outcome that would forever change the fate of Green Valley. The atmosphere in the Golden Chateau remained tense as Michael calmly removed his checkbook from his plaid shirt pocket. John Paul and Henry watched his every move with a mixture of anxiety and regret. The entire restaurant seemed to hold its breath. "Gentlemen," Michael began, his serene voice filling the silence, "when my father started working on these lands, he taught me that a person's value isn't in the clothes they wear or the car they drive. It's in their character." Sarah, who was still discreetly observing from her corner, began taking notes rapidly. There was something about this man's story that went far beyond the rumors circulating around town. "My father, Samuel Roberts, started as an employee on the farms in the region. He worked hard, saved every penny, and gradually bought small pieces of land. He taught me that respect is earned through honest work, not appearances." The name caused a murmur of recognition among the older guests. Samuel Roberts was a local legend, the man who had transformed abandoned lands into prosperous farms, but had always maintained his simplicity. "When he retired," Michael continued, filling out the check with precise movements, "he left me not just his lands, but primarily his values, and it was by following these values that I managed to expand our businesses." John Paul paled upon seeing the amount written on the check, a sum that covered not just the dinner, but represented a generous lesson in humility. "This amount is to cover my meal and establish a fund so that the Golden Chateau can serve rural workers from the region for free once a week. Simple people who, like my father, contribute to the true wealth of this land." The lady with the pearl necklace let out an exclamation of surprise. Other clients shifted uncomfortably in their chairs, ashamed of their earlier behavior. On the other side of the salon, a young waitress named Carla observed the scene with tears in her eyes. The daughter of farmers, she worked at the restaurant to pay for her agronomy studies, enduring daily the same kind of prejudice Michael had faced. "But Mr. Roberts," stammered Henry, "we need to apologize for yesterday's treatment." "I don't need apologies," Michael interrupted gently. "I need actions. This restaurant is located in the heart of an agricultural region. It doesn't make sense for it to be a place that excludes precisely those who make this land prosper." Sarah approached discreetly, capturing every word. As a journalist, she recognized an extraordinary story when she saw one. But there was something more there, a genuine admiration for the man who was transforming a situation of humiliation into an opportunity for social change. "Mr. Roberts," she spoke up, surprising everyone with her courage, "would it be possible for us to talk about your plans for the region?" Michael observed her with interest. Amid so many people trying to approach him out of self-interest, this young journalist showed a sincere concern for the local community. "Of course, Miss Parker. In fact, I have some projects I'd like to share with the community through your newspaper, projects that can change the future of Green Valley." Carla, the waitress, approached timidly with the excuse of serving more water. Michael noticed her interest and smiled gently. "You're the daughter of Joe from Sunflower Farm, aren't you? Your father told me about your agronomy studies." The young woman nodded, surprised to be recognized. "When you graduate, come by my office. We're developing a sustainable agriculture program, and we'll need young talent." The entire restaurant followed the unfolding events, witnessing how that simple man, whom they had belittled, revealed himself to be not just a successful businessman, but someone with a transformative vision for the region. John Paul, still holding the check, nervously cleared his throat. "Mr. Roberts, about the project to serve rural workers, could we start next week?" "That would be excellent," replied Michael, standing up. "Sarah can help publicize the initiative in the newspaper. And Carla," he turned to the waitress, "perhaps you could help us adapt the menu to dishes that better represent our local culture." At that moment, something bigger than a simple lesson in humility began to take shape in Green Valley. And as Michael prepared to leave the restaurant, with the same calm manner in which he had entered, everyone realized they were witnessing the beginning of a profound transformation in their community. A week after the incident at the Golden Chateau, Green Valley was buzzing with changes. The local newspaper, under Sarah Parker's direction, had published an extensive report on Michael Roberts and his projects for the region. The headline, "The Man behind the transformation occupied the entire front page, accompanied by a photo of Michael on his lands alongside rural workers. The first special dinner for rural workers at the Golden Chateau had been a resounding success. Carla, the waitress studying agronomy, worked with the chef to create a menu that blended the restaurant's sophistication with traditional regional dishes. Pride shone in her eyes when her own Father Joe from Sunflower Farm was received as the guest of honor. However, not everyone was satisfied with the changes. Anthony Meadows, owner of the largest group of agricultural companies in the region after Michael, watched the events with growing concern. His traditional methods of intensive agriculture and resistance to sustainable practices were beginning to be questioned. "We need to do something," Anthony told his associates during an emergency meeting. "This Roberts is changing the balance of power in the region. His sustainable agriculture projects could affect our business." Meanwhile, in the makeshift office Michael maintained on his main farm, Sarah was conducting another interview. The journalist had discovered that the businessman's plans went far beyond simple acts of kindness. "The project that excites me the most," Michael explained, unrolling plans and projects on his rustic wooden table, "is the creation of a cooperative for small producers. We'll provide technology, knowledge, and market access to families who have always lived on the fringes of agribusiness." Sarah took notes furiously, impressed by the businessman's vision. "And how did this idea come about?" "My father always said that the land has room for everyone to prosper," Michael replied, his eyes fixed on an old photograph on the wall where a man in a worn hat smiled next to a young boy. He believed that true progress only happens when it benefits the entire community. At the Golden Chateau, Carla was finishing her shift when she received an unexpected proposal. John Paul, the owner, called her into his office. "Miss Carla, your contribution to the Special Dinners project has been exceptional. I'd like to promote you to Social Events Coordinator for the restaurant." The young woman could hardly believe it. "But what about my agronomy studies?" "You can maintain both," John Paul assured her. "In fact, your education will be an asset in bringing the Golden Chateau even closer to the rural community." Meanwhile, at Green Valley's City Hall, a tense meeting was unfolding. Anthony Meadows presented his concerns to Mayor Robert Adams. "Mayor, these Roberts projects will destabilize the entire agricultural structure of the region. Small producers don't have the capacity to compete in today's market." The mayor, a pragmatic man who had always navigated carefully between the city's different interests, pondered. "Anthony, times are changing. Sustainability is no longer just a differential, it's a necessity." "Necessity?" Anthony laughed humorlessly. "What we need is to keep things as they've always been. This Roberts is filling the small producers' heads with grandiose ideas that will only lead them to ruin." At Michael's model farm, a group of agronomy students, including Carla, participated in a workshop on sustainable cultivation techniques. The enthusiasm was palpable as they learned about efficient irrigation systems and natural pest control methods. "The future of agribusiness lies in the harmony between productivity and sustainability," Michael explained, walking among the experimental plantations. "We can no longer ignore our responsibility to the environment and future generations." Sarah, who was following the workshop for her next report, noticed suspicious movement of some men photographing the property from a distance. She discreetly approached Michael. "Mr. Roberts, I think we need to talk about something important. I have information about possible attempts to sabotage your projects." Michael nodded calmly, showing no surprise. "Changes always encounter resistance, Sarah. But you know what my father used to say? That the best seeds are those that face the storm before sprouting." The sun was beginning to set in Green Valley, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink. In the old Ford F-100, Michael drove along the dirt roads that cut through his properties, observing the plantations that stretched to the horizon. His cell phone rang. It was Carla. "Mr. Roberts, we need to talk. I discovered something about Mr. Meadows' old land lease contracts, something that might explain why he's so desperate to stop your changes." Michael's office was illuminated only by the laptop light when Carla arrived, carrying an old dusty folder. Sarah was already there, her notepad ready. The air was charged with expectation. "I found this in the registry office archives," Carla began, spreading yellow documents on the table. "These are the original lease contracts for the lands that now belong to Mr. Meadows. But there's something strange here." Michael examined the papers carefully, while Sarah leaned in for a better look. The documents revealed a complex web of agreements made 2 decades ago, when Anthony Meadows began expanding his business in Green Valley. "These contracts," Carla pointed out, "show that several families were pressured to lease their lands for values well below market rates. Some of the signatures seem different from the original documents I found in other records." "That would explain why so many traditional families left the region at that time," Sarah murmured, connecting the dots in her mind. "But why did no one ever question this?" Michael sighed, recalling the stories his father used to tell. "Fear and necessity, Sarah. Many small farmers were in debt, and Meadows presented himself as their only salvation." The next day, the Golden Chateau was preparing for another special dinner dedicated to rural workers. John Paul had expanded the project, including gastronomy workshops with local products. The restaurant, once a symbol of exclusivity, was transforming into a meeting point between different worlds. Carla was coordinating the preparations when she noticed Anthony Meadows entering the establishment, accompanied by 2 lawyers. They headed straight for John Paul's office. "We need to cancel these events," Meadows declared, throwing a bundle of papers on the restaurateur's desk. "I have here a judicial notification alleging that you are violating sanitary norms by serving people without proper etiquette standards." John Paul, who weeks before would have bowed to such pressure, now stood firm. "Mr. Meadows, our events follow all legal norms, and more importantly, they represent the true values of this community." Meanwhile, at the newspaper office, Sarah was working furiously on her investigation. Each document Carla had found opened new doors, revealing a scheme that went beyond questionable contracts. "Michael," she called, her voice trembling with excitement, "I discovered something even bigger. The loans Meadows offered to farmers. He used privileged information about government infrastructure projects to pressure families to sell before land values skyrocketed." At City Hall, Mayor Robert Adams was receiving an unexpected visit. Michael Roberts, accompanied by Carla and several small producers, presented a revolutionary project. "Our cooperative will not just be a business," Michael explained, his eyes shining with the same passion he had inherited from his father. "It will be an integrated rural development center. We'll offer training, technology, and most importantly, dignity to family producers." The farmers present, many of whom had lost lands to Meadows in the past, listened with renewed hope. Among them was Joe, Carla's father, who now understood why his daughter was so involved in that cause. "But the old contracts," the mayor began, concerned. "Will all be reviewed," Michael assured him. "We're not seeking revenge, Mayor. We want justice and opportunities for everyone." That night, the Golden Chateau was packed for the special dinner. Families of farmers mingled with local businessmen and politicians, sharing not just a meal, but a vision of the future. Carla, in her new role as coordinator, proudly observed how her community was transforming. Her cell phone vibrated. It was a message from Sarah with photos of the cooperative's first project, a community garden on land that had previously been abandoned. "Your father would be proud," said John Paul, approaching with 2 glasses of wine. "He is," replied Michael, looking at the portrait of Samuel Roberts that now occupied a place of honor on the restaurant wall. "He always is." Dear listeners, we hope that the story of Michael Roberts and the transformation of Green Valley has touched your hearts. To continue this journey of inspiring stories about people who make a difference in their communities, we've prepared a special playlist that you can find by clicking the link on the left. If this story moved you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and leave your like. Every day we bring unique stories that explore the complexity and beauty of life in rural America. Tell us in the comments which moment touched you the most in this story. We're eager to read your impressions.